Hello, hello. Welcome to the CBT Dive. This is a video podcast that shows you how to use cognitive behavioral therapy skills in real life. I'm psychotherapist and social worker Rahim Thawer. Today's show is a CBT Shorts episode from season 1, where we have collected key moments for you to dip into. Welcome everyone to another episode of the CBT Dive. Today I'm welcoming a guest named Adnan, who's joining us all the way from Johannesburg. He loves to travel and has aspirational eyebrows that enter a room before he does. Adnan has lived with OCD for all of his life and has seen a CBT therapist and had good experiences using exposure exercises. I met Adnan in 2017 when I was visiting South Africa, and look forward to spending time with him again when I return. Adnan, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited that you volunteered to be a guest. I think for listeners, it's important for them to know that if we were working on a situation specific to obsessive thoughts or compulsion, we would actually use a thought record in a different way than I've typically been using it on this podcast. So today, I'm excited to have you here because we're actually examining something that's not related to your OCD diagnosis, but more about you navigating the world as a gay man. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. So the situation you had identified before we began was this moment where you hesitate to set bottom as a preference on Grindr. So for people listening who don't know what that means or what we're talking about, just a bit of context, when we're on online dating and hookup apps, it often asks what your sexual role preference is, to be a penetrative partner or a receptive partner. Both are fabulous options, but I think as we explore this, we'll see why Adnan hesitates. When's the last time you were on your phone and fiddling with your preferences and you actually hesitated to set bottom as a preference?
About a week ago,
Okay.
I just moved down to Cape Town. So new city.
Yes.
And I was like, you know what? Actually, this is it.
So a week ago, when you were hesitating to set your preferences on Grindr, what were some of the feelings you were experiencing?
I think the overwhelming feeling was shame, fear of judgment specifically, name calling. Yeah, I thought I'd get stereotyped, labeled specifically, and then I thought I'd be limiting myself as well.
There's a couple of feelings I think that are hidden in there. So when you talk about name calling or being targeted in a way, does that speak to being self-conscious or?
Yeah. It makes me feel self-conscious, but more importantly, inadequate or lesser than.
Okay. The second thing you mentioned was limiting your options. Or are you anticipating rejection? Is that the feeling?
Yeah, it's almost like there's definitely a judgment of society there, which comes from that self-consciousness of like, can I be safe here?
So I'm glad you used the word unsafe, because that definitely is a feeling. With issues of safety, the other feeling that usually accompanies this is worry or anxiety. Would you say those were present?
Yeah, some sort of anxiety, and I like to break anxiety down.
Tell me.
And I always think of it as fear of what? It comes from I can feel already like a childhood wound of not being good enough.
Okay. I'm going to name a couple other feelings just in case we've missed anything. So is there any excitement or eagerness?
It is. It's like anticipation. Yeah.
Yeah. And those are
almost lustful. It's like,
yes.
And maybe a little bit hopeful,
Yeah. Is there a feeling of longing?
More validating. Longing could be actually it. Yeah. Like the idea of, I want a reason not to use this app,
Yes. And I think when
Yeah.
you're talking about seeking a kind of connection beyond something casual, it seems like longing might be the right feeling.
Yeah.
So we've got some challenging feelings and also some pleasant feelings. And I think it's important to name them at the outset, right? You entered a new city and these feelings come up. For that moment, I want you to rate the intensity of each of these feelings. So on a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 would be the most intense. So how would you rate your experience of shame in that situation?
Let's make it an 8,
Okay. What about fear?
7,
Hmm. Self-conscious,
9,
inadequate,
5,
unsafe,
8,
anxiety or
7.
anxious? Okay. What about excitement?
Oh, I was excited. 9.
Oh, okay. Anticipation,
6.
hmm lustful.
Here's where the real tea comes out, honey. Yeah, I mean, there was a pretty good 8. Yeah.
Okay, great. Hopeful.
Um, 8
Okay. And longing.
and yeah.
6. Okay, beautiful. So in that moment, you're deciding what to do. What did you do? Or did you leave it blank? That's always an option as well.
So my first behavior was like, you know what, I'm in a new city. It's my new chapter, a new page with a new pen, and I'm the author. And if I'm writing the story again, I want to do it differently. And this time, I just don't want to give my power autonomy away to anybody else. And if this is what I want to be doing, then that's what I'm going to do. And so I did. I changed it to bottom. But then I was like, wait, hold on. There was this immediate feeling of, oh shit.
Dread.
But then I don't know whether Cape Town is as open-minded as it should be, and what if they don't, because I'm
Yeah.
also versatile if I wanted. So then I was like, okay, cool, then just change to bottom burst. I was bottom burst because I knew inside it was minimizing my anxiety.
You started talking about some important thoughts that were coming up for you, and I'd love to capture some of those. So in this situation, you're feeling shame, fear, self-consciousness, inadequacy, being unsafe, anxious, and you're thinking about your own power. You also said something about minimizing risk. So expand on that a little bit.
Like I just felt like, okay, what if I meet like a really cute guy,
Mhm.
and what if like he's also like versatile, but then he labels me or reads my profile, which actually happened, which is the beauty
Mhm.
part. Because then I don't know if I manifested it, but
Mhm.
later, an hour or two later, a friend asterisk texted me on WhatsApp to say, "Oh, hey, Mr. Bottom," winking face, a whole situation. And I was just like, see, it's not just in my head. It's like it really is. Anyway, he messages me just to say that he's in a space in his life and blah, blah, blah. And, he has a lot of energy, which I'm just like living for. But that's not the point. The point being is that in the moment when I put it on, I thought, am I limiting myself? Am I setting myself up to be just cast aside as, oh, you just said another inferior almost, or powerless? It's not really necessarily I didn't measure the transaction in power first. It was more
Mhm.
about respect. I just didn't
Okay.
want to be brushed with the same paintbrush as just being because I had a preference about something.
Okay. I'm going to slow you down for a second. You've got some good ideas that are coming out here, and I just want to see if I can capture them. So, one of the
So,
things you talk about is, and this is one of your thoughts, right? I might meet a really cute guy who, and I didn't finish that sentence. You were going to say something about, I think, a missed opportunity with him being verse and you.
yes, he might just say, oh, this guy's not really, he's not as open to opportunity as I would like
Mm.
him to be. Yeah.
So
Okay.
one of your thoughts here is I might meet a really cute guy. Who is looking for a verse person, i.e.,
First
open to
person.
opportunity. And so if I were to distill this a little bit, your fear or your concern here is that I could miss an opportunity.
Yeah. Or I could end up swiping left on someone, or someone will swipe left on me, but not give me the chance to actually not define me by a preference.
When you say I will be disrespected or I might be disrespected, can you tell me more about that? In what way would you be disrespected? Like, do people say nasty things to you if you
Not
select
to
your preference as a
me
bottom?
about bottom, people who are bottom. We all do it actually, or inadvertently or not. We perpetuate that toxic masculinity issue, which is what whether I like to fight this or not, I believe in, right? Because it's not a thing unless I allowed it to be a thing. So my automatic thought was, don't be too femme. And if you say you bottom, they're immediately going to say no to you because, oh, you're just another, And I didn't want that. I didn't want to be left. I'm starting again. Do I really want to be left powerless in this?
Yes.
Yeah. But the automatic thought is immediately, this is lesser than.
The thought is that I'm weak, or it almost becomes like a belief. But can you tell me a bit about the pressure around being a particular kind of man? Because you mentioned toxic masculinity, and part of how we understand that is, yes, feminine qualities are not celebrated. But for you, what are people conveying to you, or what are you thinking?
When it comes to sex, I think that I have this belief that tops are viewed as more macho, more masculine, more dominant, where bottoms are considered to be more feminine, more submissive. And the bottom line, I mean, pun intended, is that toxic masculinity it plays a huge part in the gay community. It influences the stereotypes we have about sexual positions, and it defines our manliness. It tells us that basically strength is everything and emotions are weakness.
And so I'm curious about how you internalize the message. So if the message is that being vulnerable and emotional is less desirable, or it makes you less of a man.
In a club situation or like at a bar, I know I'm not as feminine as I want to be.
Yes.
I stand a little more straight acting.
Yes. So let's come back to this. You're talking about how femininity is read onto you when you're at a club, and you're doing a lot of things to present more neutral or more masculine. If somebody reads you as feminine, what's the consequence of that?
What comes up for me is immediately worthiness. I feel unworthy. I'm not as good as the person who is more masculine.
Okay. And how does it take you out of the situation or the game of flirting and cruising in that club? Because I think the club is not so different from Grindr. We're just using different strategies, right? And we're trying to attract a mate. And I'm thinking about you putting forward things that will get you more bites. So if somebody is attracted to you and you do get a bite, what does that say about you?
Oh, then I feel, so if I do get a bite.
If you do get a bite. I
feel like it's an achievement, a conquest.
Yes.
It feels like I'm good enough. Okay, see it done. You still have it. Like, baby, there's something.
Yes.
So I didn't fail in that mission. Yeah.
Okay. So we've hit on something here. So because you talk about it as an achievement, right? The inverse of that would be, I'm a failure, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we look at the last two thoughts in each cluster, the one is I'm being overlooked because I'm not good enough and not worthy, and I never was. And the other one is I'm a failure, or I've failed, which is the opposite of achievement. Have a look at these automatic thoughts and let me know, which one do you think is the most salient, the most prominent in this particular situation where you hesitate to set bottom as a preference on Grindr, And the one you pick is what we're going to call the hot thought. It's the one that's driving a lot of the difficult emotions.
Definitely the second one, that I'm a failure.
Okay. And if it's because I'm a bottom, it's because I'm feminine, which means because I'm not masculine enough. Is that right?
I'm not as powerful as the man.
Mm. All right. So the hot thought, right, that we're working with is I'm a failure for not being masculine or powerful enough. All right.
Yeah.
So the hot thought is I'm a failure for not being masculine or powerful enough. And now we want to evaluate that. So give me some evidence that supports that hot thought.
I feel like I'm a failure deep down, because I don't think that when I compare, which is a horrible, horrible thing, when I compare myself linearly to somebody else, I immediately feel unattractive, because I don't have the physique of a typical man. Like, I'm not as muscular, I'm not as strong, and that's why I gravitate more towards being bottom.
Okay. So you compare yourself and you're like, hey, I don't look like some of these people. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah,
Where else do you feel like you're not masculine or powerful enough?
I don't like the things that men are interested in.
Mhm.
I don't watch sport. Um, I am very empathic, very in touch with my emotion, a bit too much actually. Um,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
And
so
and that and being in touch
that,
with emotion is the opposite
that's
of masculinity.
not in my
Okay.
family. Oh fuck no. Father says stuff like, I cannot cry, I'm a man. And I'm like, huh?
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. In the dating context, has there been any experiences where you've felt like a failure or like you haven't achieved in seducing somebody or getting their attention specifically for not being masculine enough or powerful enough?
Um, yeah, so it also comes down to body dysmorphia, where because I feel so wholly inadequate, I then end up getting a lot of like performance anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So the with a partner, so with a recent dating experience,
Mm-hmm.
um, it takes me a very long time to be comfortable with you in order to then start becoming versatile. Not that
Mm.
I don't have an erection, but the erection may not be there if it comes to a pressured situation. So if I feel pressured, nothing's happening. And the idea is that I think my penis is not good enough.
Right. So there's some beliefs you have about yourself that have led to performance anxiety. And in brackets, I put or performance reluctance. I
Yeah.
reframe it that way because performance anxiety sometimes means it's understood as I can't do something, but actually, I think there's a reluctance to enter into an experience because it doesn't necessarily feel safe. We worry about being judged,
Yeah.
right? Now, what's some evidence that does not support the hot thought? So, evidence that suggests you are not a failure. You've actually achieved in connection, in power, in being a man.
I have so many people that reaffirm and validate and are my friends and contradict what my belief system tells me.
Are those your friends?
Friends, acquaintances, people at gym, when I say something
Okay.
to the trainer, and I'll just be like, oh, like, and he's like, what are you talking about? You're actually so strong. And I'm like,
Mm,
no, I'm not. I'm like, feminine.
yes.
So I can't be.
Yeah.
And then
Uh-huh.
he's like, you can lift more than most people can. Yeah.
Wow. So
Yeah.
trainer says you can lift more than most people.
When it comes to that body dysmorphia, I've tested people's gag reflex with it. So it can't be as small as I think it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like a big dick, but it's not small.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So
So I don't know how to use it. It's evidence that supports that my dick isn't actually that small. You know, like you couldn't deep throat it, basically.
okay. So my dick
Yeah.
isn't as small as I think. And now, I think dick size, it does fluctuate and change between people. But the part that I'm hearing here that I think is most important is less about the size. You said gag, right? So I'm thinking other people are appreciating it as it is, regardless of an evaluation of its size, right? So I'm going to say, as you said, my dick isn't as small as I think. More importantly,
Yeah.
people show me
Interest. No. Yes.
that
I mean,
they're into it.
yeah.
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
I'm also curious to know if people and sexual partners in particular, or romantic partners, have affirmed your masculinity, your power, your sense of achievement in any context, whether it's sexual or otherwise.
Yeah. Somebody once asked me, what is it that I love about bottoming? Because they couldn't do it. They just couldn't get themselves to do it. And I explained to them what it is that I get psychologically, which is this idea of control. And he helped me understand, because I was like, oh, that's the most, and he was like, no, that's the most powerful thing that you could ever fucking do. You can actually surrender to someone.
Okay, so the evidence that doesn't support the idea that you're a failure for not being masculine or powerful enough is that there are many people who do affirm you. Your trainer says you can lift more than most people can, and you gave other examples of how you actually have quite a bit of core strength. You think about your dick size, and people have shown you that they're into you and into your body, and other people actually envy that you can bottom, and they wish they could. Right. So now we move to the next column where we're thinking about an alternative thought or a more balanced thought to your hot thought, right? Which is that I'm a failure, for not being masculine or powerful enough. You're saying there is power in being able to let go and quote unquote surrender. What's another alternative or balanced thought you can think of that would actually be more helpful for you?
I think I'd like to affirm myself, more specifically, like the body dysmorphia stuff. I don't think it's the responsibility of a partner or friends or my trainer to affirm me.
Okay, I'm going to write down something completely different.
I love you.
What you're talking about, well, this is an important thing. We're talking about systems of oppression and homophobia and femmephobia and misogyny and toxic masculinity. And I cannot let your alternative thought be, I shouldn't let other people affect how I think. I think to be kind to yourself, one of the alternative thoughts needs to be, it's normal to be affected by societal views.
That's
right?
compassion. That's beautiful.
Yes. And so it's normal to be affected by societal views. I deserve self-compassion for being wherever I am in the process of self-acceptance.
Okay.
How does that feel?
That's so different. That is so much more better. Oh my God, that's so much more healing. I can actually feel like it doesn't feel as pressured and as dangerous as my one.
Well, here's the thing. Our culture and society is so individualistic that when it comes to identifying problems, we are happy to talk about how they're informed systemically. And then when it comes to the solution, we're like, oh, well, it's all individual. Somebody can't see me in a negative way unless I let them, right? I heard you say something to that effect.
So many times.
Yeah. And I think those kinds of affirmations are helpful to some degree, but it does also over individualize the issue, and it makes it about you being in control of how you feel. But actually, I think there's some value being able to say, the world is shitty and I'm affected by that. I'm responding. There's something about my intelligence, my awareness, how I show up in the world that's under attack, and I'm allowed to have a response to that. So anyway, that's my piece. And I've inserted this alternative thought that isn't actually yours, but maybe you'll like it. So
I love it. I love it. Thank you. I'm literally blown away. Blown away.
Yeah. So your first alternative thought was there is power in being able to let go and surrender. And the other alternative thought is it's normal to be affected by societal views. I deserve self-compassion for being wherever I am in the process of self-acceptance. Are there any other alternative thoughts that you'd like to use or you can think of that might be helpful?
I want to talk more to the issue of my hesitance,
Okay.
using the same logic that you used, that
Yes.
it's okay for me. It is okay for me to have a sexual preference and not and feel a certain way about it.
Mm,
I had this because of a systemic issue as well. I didn't just wake up and create
yes.
it fucking self. This is society that also
Yes.
helped me. Yes.
Right.
Inherent.
So what you're
Yeah.
saying is it's okay
Yeah.
for me to have a sexual preference. My shame comes from society, not my inherent weakness.
No, there's no weakness. Fuck, and people are telling me it's strength. And I'm really good at what I do. So,
Yes. So, okay. Any more thoughts that you think would be useful as alternatives?
power isn't just muscles. I don't think a man who's just muscular is particularly strong inside.
Mm,
And I can quote my father as the example, right?
mhm,
The idea is masculinity is something that is subjective, that is defined by each person. What is femininity? What is masculinity? Shouldn't be defined objectively. It should be defined by each person, and it
mhm,
should be challenged and grown and balanced and readjusted. And it's not static. It is um, non-linear. It's on a
mm.
spectrum, and it should be on a
Yeah.
spectrum. There are days when I wake up and I do feel really masculine. There are days when I wake up and I feel really femme. And that's perfectly fine. I don't know why is it that I have to look to outside of me, get some sort of validation to just
Mhm.
become, to feel the okayness. Like, no, fuck that, man. Life is so
Yeah.
short.
And so you're saying like masc and femme energy
It's fluid, yeah.
and
It
feels
should be.
powerful.
It's powerful. Both there's power and there's merit and there's demerit in whatever, in everything. Right? Too much of
Okay.
this, too much of that. Da, 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 da. Who cares? I'm just gonna go with the flow and stop living in my damn head and putting things in labels.
Okay. So I'm just looking at your alternative thought list and it's really good. So, of all of these, Adnan, which one do you like the most? Do you believe in the most?
Sure, all of them. If I just had to pick one,
Now,
I feel like it's the
your
last one actually.
masculinity should be defined by me subjectively. Okay. I'm happy to pick
Because
that one. I
that's
just,
resonating with me, where I feel like I now have a creative license or the permission from
Mhm.
myself to finally just be okay,
So masculinity can be defined by me subjectively.
or is defined
Now,
by me. Yeah.
yeah, okay. Um, before I highlight that one, I want you to, because you're somebody who's been telling me about affirmations. So I want you to look at the list again and make sure you're picking one that doesn't feel like a good affirmation, but is an alternative thought that you think you actually believe in.
I
Yeah.
particularly the second one I particularly love as well. Just the idea of showing myself some compassion.
So I'm just going to go ahead and highlight both those thoughts. One is it's normal for me to be affected by societal views. I deserve self-compassion for being wherever I am in the process of self-acceptance. And I'm going to highlight masculinity is defined by me subjectively because they're both important to you. When you think about those thoughts as you are in the situation where you're hesitating to select bottom as a preference on Grindr, and you say to yourself, like you repeat these two alternative thoughts to yourself, where's your shame at that point?
Yeah, give it like a 2 or 3.
Okay. What about fear?
No, 1. I don't care
Self-conscious?
about what you think anymore. I just don't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
self-conscious.
a little bit more conscious, maybe like a 5.
No problem. And inadequate?
2.
Okay. And
No,
unsafe?
1. 1.
Anxiety?
Yeah, a little bit. 4.
Excitement?
10.
Anticipation?
Let's make that a 7.
Lustful?
Horny as fuck, so 10.
10. Okay. Hopeful?
Yeah, okay, 8. Can leave it as is. And longing,
Longing?
I still keep there. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
keep it as
keep there.
6.
And now I wonder for you if new feelings come up, any new emotions.
It feels very light. It feels like a comfort within myself. You could call it acceptance. or
Comfort?
compassion, empathy,
Like content.
stronger,
Mm-hmm.
more powerful. Like I don't need you to, I'm less concerned with what you need to say after I tell you what I need to say. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
And when
Powered.
you give yourself self-compassion and you say to yourself, it's normal to be affected by societal views, is there a bit of sadness or grief that comes up there?
A mourning. Like, I
Mourning,
wish
yes.
society wasn't this way.
So in a way, do you also feel determined to make change?
In my own way, yeah.
Adnan, your shame went down. Your rating went from 8 to 3, fear from 7 to 1, self-conscious 9 to 5, inadequate 5 to 2, unsafe 8 to 1, anxiety 7 to 4. Your excitement rating went from 9 to 10, anticipation 6 to 7, lustful 8 to 10, hopeful stayed at 8, longing stayed at 6. When we contained, managed, countered some of the difficult feelings, there was space for new feelings. Now, I'm going to tell you, as much as I like the positive feelings that come up, the one that I think needs a lot of attention is mourning. Okay, so here are the new feelings that came up for you: mourning, determined, self-compassion, acceptance, comfort, content, strong, powerful. So those are all great feelings that we made way for. Why am I highlighting mourning? Because I think when we realize that, there's some things we can't change, or that we've internalized difficult messages from a dominant system, I think there is a kind of grief and mourning, right? That's there. And if we're going to have self-compassion, we also need to grieve. And there's somebody you're trying to be in this process, right? When you talk about how you set up your online profile from a marketing perspective, you're trying to portray something that you know is desirable. And when you let that go, you're grieving the idea or the possibility of meeting those people, right? There's a lost opportunity, and you're starting to be content with that lost opportunity. So there is some grief and mourning there, right? Because you're like, I'm living in my truth, and that means I miss out on this other thing, right?
Yeah.
And then I'd love to hear maybe a couple of just reflections or thoughts on this process.
What's interesting for me is that the idea that I do need to mourn, that by coming to terms with who I am, I might not be attractive, or I might not be able to get every guy that ideally on paper I would have wanted to have gotten.
And there's something attached to being able to appear attractive to somebody else and seduce them, right? It gives you power, and you said it, it's a sense of achievement. Now, if we don't get that, we feel like a failure. So just when you're talking about letting people know on a dating and hookup app that you're a bottom, or you want to be a receptive partner during sex, deep down, the thing that you're really contemplating is not just about opportunity, it's about how you're seen as a man, and as a success, as a man in the world, right? And so it taps into some really deep things that you are able to also trace from your childhood and dad's messages about what it means to be a man, right? So the level, the degree, the depth with which the mourning has to happen is not it's quite deep. It's not simplistic by any means.
No.
And then I'm going to leave it there for today. I want to thank you for joining us and being part of this public experiment on my video podcast. And I want to thank our listeners and viewers for tuning in. That's our CBT Shorts episode for today. I'm Rahim Thawer, and thank you for joining us. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you want more content from us, check out our other social media platforms. The CBT Dive is intended for educational purposes and not meant as a replacement for therapy.